Alright, we should be live for our show here on the Game Wisdom channel. It is Sunday. That means it's time for another talk about game dev and game industry topics. Joining me as always, my co-host Sharky, who is back on his PC.
What is a PC?
I don't know. Some strange box full of Steam, I guess.
Yeah, I meant like, I think what happened there was a hole on the top of my PC, and it let all the steam out.
You need a valve to fix that, I think.
Yeah, I think I need a valve.
Mm-hmm. But it is great to have you back on your PC. We won't have to listen to. Didn't you say you were in like a submarine last time? Or did like someone say you were like stuck in the ocean?
Yeah, it was definitely a oceanic. I was taking a vacation back to my hometown. In the ocean. And service there isn't as good. You get this kind of tinny echoing from the ocean and everything. It's horrible for communication. I mean, it's great for everything else. Horrible for communication, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now that your issues have been fixed, my headset should start acting up even more now to compensate.
Yeah, now that my issues are fixed, I get more issues too because this morning my keyboard broke. My brand new keyboard broke.
Mm-hmm. Don't you
and now
love
I've got to send it back.
Computer hardware issues?
Yeah, I mean, like this computer so far has taken me for a real ride. I mean, like building a PC. I have built several PCs, not like 100 or anything. I think I've built maybe 5, 10, something like around there. Plenty enough, to know that if I really take my time and really do it, just try to build a clean as possible kind of thing, it takes me about an hour. Took me 4.5 days to get this thing done because of just all the constant issues. Hey, where's the case we're sending you? Doesn't have instructions. You have no idea what these wires are. You'll have to take the whole thing apart to, use your knowledge to figure out what these wires are. And, we're not even, and then there's wires that you've never encountered before. And then, you get it all together and it doesn't even work properly. And I still got to figure out what that is because my RGB is just stuck in blue and the remote control ain't working. Not that I do want them in blue. Just maybe not that shade of blue, and maybe some patterns to them, but still not right. And I still got to configure software and everything, get my motherboard, my RAM, and my malfunctioning keyboard out of rainbow puke mode.
Oh no.
I think they sent me a CD, but it's yeah. I mean, I do have a CD thing that I could put in here, but this case doesn't have a place to put it. So yeah, not going to run that. So yeah, still working out. Tons of issues on this. The trauma is not over with this one yet.
Never is.
No, it usually is. I mean, like my last computer, rest its soul, rest its hard drive. Went together an hour, worked the first time, had no issues out of it. 5 years later, something happens. And, replace most of it.
Alright, so we've got a lot of things happening this week. I can't even think of the games I've played because I've been doing all the Steam Festival demos. So I'm up to like 70 games played in the last 5 days. So a lot of that's just like a blur.
You can't think of one of them?
No,
I played 70 games. I can't think of a single one.
I remember all those names. It's just like all gets like stored in my memory and then gets locked away.
You should have at least been able to remember a few standouts.
Fights in Tight Spaces, I think, is a really good one.
That's the tactical RPG, right?
It's the tactical beat 'em up. play cards, and then punch people in the face with them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We tried that very weird horror game last night that just did not work. Just a very poor UI. And we gotta do, I think, another chat about UI design, especially when it comes to retro games. Because I think developers are still messing up on that fact that just because your game looks retro doesn't mean your UI should be retro.
Yeah, maybe it can look retro, but it can't act retro.
Mm-hmm. And I've been playing Project Starship X, a roguelike shmup, where you control Swag Fulu as you try and get a high score, and when you fail, the game tells you to get good. So I'm pretty sure Shark is really just the scorekeeper in that game.
I will never tell.
So, have you had a chance to play any new games with the new PC yet?
No, but I have gotten to play several new games with my mobile phone.
Are you still a mobile gamer whale, or no? Did you break free?
Well, I stopped being a whale, but, you can't kind of undo that kind of thing. I did not stop playing. I still playing that one of those games. The one that I became... Well, I wasn't a whale. I was more of a dolphin or a shark.
Let's see.
But definitely spent way too much money on that.
I spent $5 in 2 years, and you spend like $40 in a week.
Oh, I spent more than that.
Ramin would look disapprovingly at you, I think.
Well, the part of it was research. You know what I mean? Because part of it was I let myself fall into the trap to find out exactly how deep that rabbit hole goes.
It goes very deep, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, very deep.
Yeah. Well,
But hey, I became rank 8. Of course, I was like rank 50th before I paid anything.
I've been playing roguelikes to do my research for the next book, so I've been doing basically an on-off session of Atomic Crops and Monster Train every night for the last week. Almost at Covenant 20 or Ascension 20 in Monster Train, and I'm on year 9 of 10 of Atomic Crops. And year 10, basically, they just throw all the BS at you.
What I find funny is that I had to pull so many teeth to get you to play Monster Train, and now you just don't stop.
Well, I gotta write the book, too, on roguelikes, so I gotta be playing a lot of them. But my friends are still, I got 2 friends at level 25, like, they already completely beat the game.
Dang. I think I'm on like 2 or 3 because I've only gotten to play, I think, like 4 games of it since it released. Because when it first released, I was hyper busy, and then my computer broke and everything else.
Alright, but with that, let's get to some quick game news, and then we'll discuss our first topic. I think we'll do student projects, as that will lead into finishing a game, I'm sure. So,
yeah.
The big news this week, of course, is that The Last of Us 2 is finally out. And, of course, it's got everyone complaining about controversy or saying it's the greatest game ever and every game should copy it. It's one of those two.
Yeah, most of the people that are saying it's the greatest game ever are journalists.
Mm-hmm.
That either got paid off or they, one person recently said that it wasn't that they got paid off or anything, it's that they're trying to show off to their other writer friends by, writing something beautiful. It's like, well, why don't you write something beautiful about this really crappy game instead of writing something false about the really crappy game?
Mm-hmm.
All the user reviews are coming in bad.
It kind of reminds me of the critical discourse around Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, and how so many game journals are talking about this game being this emotional, uplifting, amazing game. Nobody touching on how horrible it looked, how annoying it was to play, the UI issues. It
Hmm.
did have Sting in it, so I mean that's a positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we were talking about like earlier about if the rumors are true, or if as in 100% true context, as in, you know, you seeing all the context in the rumors, or if the rumors were lacking context, and it's seeming like they contain pretty much all the context needed.
Mm.
And yeah, Last of Us 2 is looking quite dark and bad.
I have a
I'm
few.
glad I wasn't invested in the first one.
I never played the first one, so those I
Yeah,
have
I
like
didn't either.
no. I have no stakes in this at all.
Same here. Which is the reason why I'm glad I don't have no stakes in it after the way this one turned out.
Yeah, I have a few friends who are saying how much they love the game. I'm hearing amazing thing about the engine that they use more than just the story. Like
Well, yeah,
somebody
everybody said that the graphics is really good in it.
somebody showed me a gif of a character taking off his shirt, and it's shown entirely with the shirt taking off, no cuts, nothing like that. And that's just mind blowing because normally, like any kind of fabric or clothing physics don't necessarily work with those models.
Yeah. Well, I'm at Red Dead Redemption, and like that studio in general likes to do a lot of that kind of things.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah. But, does that add to the gameplay?
No, but it is a beautiful shirt physics.
Yeah. There we go. Beautiful shirt physics, the game.
I'm sure somebody's going to try and figure that one out.
Yeah. We have another big piece of news today, too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that WB Games is for sale. They're trying to sell and get out of the games market, which is currently owned by AT&T, which AT&T and WB Games is both really, some of the bottom feeders in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Warner Brothers with their loot box simulator, Mordor,
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, and they're selling it for I think $4 billion. And of course, they do have some good licenses in there, like the Batman Arkham series and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that, there's I think 9 studios or 11 studios or something like that are underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of studios are getting sold.
Whew.
And it's interesting to see what that has impact on for the industry as a whole. And right now, there seems to be only 3 possible people who can afford $4 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the other 3 bad in the industry. We got EA, we got Take-Two. Yep, we got Take-Two, and we got Activision Blizzard.
I was guessing 2 of the 3 in my head as you were describing it.
So yeah, WB, one of the worst, are getting sold, and it's going to get bought by one of the other worst, apparently.
So they'll be
or never bought at all. Yeah. And I think that WB is probably on a lower scale than Activision Blizzard, than EA, and then Take-Two. So, WB Games is probably going to get a lot worse. No matter who buys it. Unless it comes down off their price into where somebody more reasonable can buy it.
And again, this is one of those greater topics that we've talked about before with just how much does success really get you as a major studio? We said the similar thing about BioWare. BioWare Magic for a long time could do no wrong. Mm-hmm. And then they had 2 massive stinkers. And again, even a stinker from BioWare still probably earned them a lot of press and a lot of coverage.
Mm-hmm. Probably a lot more than the good ones.
Yeah. And with WB Games, I mean, think about it, the Batman Arkham series was probably one of the most standout AAA franchises of the last decade. Not counting Arkham Arkham Knight. I always get Arkham Knight and Arkham City confused. And you would think that that kind of success would just kind of, like, it kind of writes you a blank check in the industry. But it doesn't. I mean, look at Maxis as another really good example. I mean, they made The Sims. Just, like, think about that for a second. That game that basically defined casual games. And SimCity. And now that company is out.
Well, that's because they sold to EA.
Mm-hmm.
Because EA offered them a very, very sweet payday. It's not that they weren't making money. They were still making money. Mm-hmm. Maxis could have went on without selling kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But they wanted that massive payday kind of thing. Yeah. And the benefits that come with it. And the benefits where EA shuts them down.
Yeah. Don't forget about Westwood Studios as well.
Mm-hmm.
Playing that CNC remaster and seeing the Westwood Studios logo again, I felt like the knife go into my soul. Thinking about that company not being around anymore.
Yeah. And there's a little bit more to this news with the, whole WDB, AT&T thing. Mm-hmm. Apparently, this is all because of a specific investor that has bought a bunch of shares of AT&T kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Also known as, I think it's a evangelist stockholder or something. Mm-hmm. Basically, they go around trying to, change the company kind of thing. And this particular individual is known for changing company to, make their stock prices shoot up so they can sell off all their stocks and just, very, very short-term gains and long-term losses kind of thing. So, like, AT&T is probably going to go farther in the dump than it has in the past.
Because we all know short-term success really works well when it comes to game studios, right?
Well, I meant I think the aim with the selling off the studios is for the short-term game. Mm-hmm. They're selling off these studios. It's one less thing they have to pay for. Therefore, profits higher, and they're getting the $4 billion for it, aka profits higher, and then he cashes out. Mm-hmm. So he's lowering down their bills, in the short term, and raising their profit in the short term from selling it, in order to get that massive swell into the stock price and then sell it. He may be doing other stuff too, but that's what I've heard so far within realm of the gaming and whatnot.
So. It kind of reminds me of another example of this when Square Enix decided to sell off the Hitman IP. And again, Hitman is one of the longer running PC franchises, and thankfully IDOS managed to buy it back, and it seems to be doing really well for them now. I mean, they're up to, I think, going to be kind of Hitman 3.
I don't think Square Enix chose to sell it. I think what it was is in the contracts that IDOS had signed with them, is that they were supposed to get a option to buy themselves back, themselves and the franchise back, mm-hmm. after X date, and X date came up and they decided to buy themselves back. Mm. I think that's what happened, but I don't actually know. Mm. But I'm 99% sure that's what happened on that one.
And wait, WB Games is NetherRealm too, is that right?
I think so. I mean, they have 9, 10, 11 studios or so.
Damn. So, I mean, that is some major names that are up for sale. I mean, if EA buys NetherRealm, I mean, what else can they do with loot boxes? I mean, that game already has a ton of loot boxes in it.
Well, they'll find out a way to make it worse.
Let's see. So, anything else major news-wise this week?
Is that not major enough?
There's always something new.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you who somehow missed it, tonight is the last night of the Steam Spring or Steam Summer Festival, with I think they said over 900 game demos available for people to try out. So we've been doing it for the last 4 nights, and tonight will be our final night. Oh, here's some weird esoteric news. Helix 2, the drug simulator / JRPG, is coming out tomorrow. He just announced it at 5 o'clock in the morning last night. So that's what we're going to be doing Monday night. We're going to be playing Helix 2. If you are in a place where recreational drugs are legal, be sure to take them before watching. If you're not, then drugs are bad, people.
Yeah.
But
I lost it. Don't you hate it when you have something and then you lose it?
Oh yes.
Like a PC.
Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be a very fun night. I'm sure we're going to have some very weird dreams after that stream.
Oh, now I remember. We still need to talk about this whole topic of temporary demos. There's only going to be demos for this 1 week, and then they're going away. What the heck is that?
All right. Well, add it to the list. Maybe we'll do that next week.
All right.
All right, but let's get to our first topic then, and let's discuss student projects. I think this should be, I think, somewhat on the quicker side. Again, who knows with these kinds of talks, but through the itch bundle and the Steam Festival, and just with the greater proliferation of digital stores, it has afforded students a lot of opportunities to put their games out there. Again, in the dark ages, where you could only put your game on your own website, have it buried on the internet, today you can post your game anywhere. And especially if you're on Steam, all it costs is $100, and you'll have a fancy store page for your title.
And if you get on Steam, you're guaranteed to succeed, right?
Circa 2011, I believe.
Right.
But one of the things that we've been...
need a time machine.
Exactly. Well, just make FTL, go back in time for FTL's release, sell it, and you'll earn all the money.
There we go.
Perfect.
Easy.
But one of the things that we've been seeing is student developers or student games being put on stores. Not just on itch, but also on Steam. If you remember from several of our Weird Games segments, we've been seeing a DigiPen student games being put up for sale. And this seems kind of off to me. What about you?
Yeah, student projects have a lot in common with game jams, and neither of which should ever be sold. There's longer game jams, there's shorter game jams, some that only last 3 days, some that last a month, some that last several months, kind of thing. Same thing with student projects. Some last, few days, some last a week, some last a few months, kind of thing. But, usually those have less time per day spent on it because you're also working on school stuff, too. I mean, they may even have a year in it, but, it's a year of 2 or 3 hours a day kind of thing. Where a game jam, like a 3-day game jam is 3 days of very hardcore, and you have a plan before you even go into it, which is probably like a day or two's worth of work already. So you get probably about 2 or 3 months worth of student project work in there in those 3 days.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And let's talk about the obvious fact. If you're making a student game, that is your first title. That is negative your first title. You really can't put that as in the same vein as your first game as an indie developer at your own studio. And
yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking a student game that you're very attached to and then after you continue working on it after that and build into a good game, because we have seen a good example of that, and that's Raft. Are you familiar with that game?
Heard of it, but never played it.
Raft is a really solid game. Like, I played it when it was a student project, and it was very addictive and very fun, but it's very, very micromanagey, very, very little to do with it. And I talked to the developer on it, and he's talking about how he's kind of overwhelmed with how much attention the game was getting because YouTubers were playing the heck out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And but then he kept on developing and everything, developed it for another year, something like that, before going into early access. So you took student project, worked on it for another year, and then went into early access, kind of thing. Like, it wasn't just straight up a student project thrown into early access.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a major distinction we need to make. That we've seen not only like games like Rap, but we can also talk about Super Hot, Forager as well. Those were game jam games, so not exactly student projects, but they were still in their original concept. Exactly. And when those games did well, the developers didn't just say, let's take this version, we'll put it on Steam and call it a day. They said, okay, people like this, let's expand on it and take that version and try and sell it.
Yeah, and they did quite well.
Yeah. I mean, some of this, and like, this is the problem, I think, and I may get into trouble when I say this. I'm going to shield Shark from this one. But, like, when we look at some of these games, like on Keymail or on some of these press sites that they say, they're DigiPen projects, they don't look all that well. And it's obvious. They're student projects. They were not conceived to be commercial products. If it was a commercial product, you would make it at a studio. Mm-hmm. And like we said,
even if that studio is just your better.
Yeah. And like we've said, there's nothing wrong with putting a student project on a site like Itch, on a portfolio, on your own website. But saying
don't list on Steam or sell it.
But when you attach a price tag to a student project, that's when I feel like you've gone, beyond the mark there, beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm. Now then, there's nothing wrong with taking that student game and then, or game jam game, working on it more, putting a lot more effort into it, another year or so.
Yep.
And then releasing it on early access kind of thing, or several years in the case of didn't what's his name with Forger take like 2 or 3 years, and then they didn't go into early access, but they went into full release. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and they still updated the game even after going on Steam. It got, I think, another year or two of updates. It may still being updated right now.
Mm-hmm. There's quite a story behind Forger too, if you're aware of it. About the person who made it. I can't remember the exact story, but he was in a bad life spot. I think he's disabled, or some reason he's brutally poor kind of thing, and like I think his mom was helping him a lot, and this was kind of his last chance, and it was a chance he needed.
Yeah,
able to pull it off.
I mean, again, the industry, especially major sites, love these underdog stories. I mean, look at Cuphead. The idea that you can put a second mortgage on your house and it'll make you a great game developer.
Yeah.
And
hopefully Project Red becomes one of those too.
But at the end of the day, though, as we've seen and as we've spoken with developers who have made it, 10, 15 plus years, you can't really go in with Hail Mary plays if you want to succeed as a long-term developer. But That's a topic for another day.
Don't mortgage your house.
Yeah. With student projects, like what we've been seeing, some of the ones that we've had a chance to play, is that they're just very. It really goes back to what we talked about last week with the itch games and kind of first time titles. That it's really just a prototype of a game and not much else.
Yeah, it may be a little bit beyond a prototype, but it's not much beyond it, kind of thing. It's not even enough to be a real demo kind of thing. Like a developer friend of mine is working on a game that I think is going to be very beautiful when it comes out. A lot of people have already compared it to Ori in the Blind Forest, although it doesn't look like Ori in the Blind Forest, but like like some of the style is there. Where the fact that they have really white characters. They have kind of really fierce kind of enemies, kind of thing, that kind of thing. But their art budget is probably about 30,000 times less than Ori's. But still, I think it's going to be a really stylized and beautiful game. But he has been working on that, and bit by bit, and they're very far from release. But I believe they started off kind of as a game jam or a student project. I can't remember which.
Yeah, and the issue I think we see is that just because you have a quote-unquote finished core gameplay loop doesn't mean you have a finished game. And again, like this is one of the things that we see from a lot of first-time developers as well, that it's that, wouldn't it be a great idea if we did this? And the whole game is built on that one very crazy mechanic, but it doesn't really end up going anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, if core gameplay loop was all you needed, then I would have released Project Triad probably, 3 months before you played it, Josh?
Yeah. That would have been a very amazing version of the game, too, right?
Yeah, that would have been the best.
And as we've said before, when you're trying to market or when you're trying to put your game out there, the second you attach a price tag to it, it's no longer considered this, little thing I'm doing for fun. It is a product. And unfortunately, it's going to be treated as such when you stick it next to a game like Ori, or Super Hot, or Forager, or Fallen London, or anything else out there.
FTL.
Darkest Dungeon. We can just name big name indie games right now.
Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
It's like, you can buy the Stardew Valley for $15. Would you, if you had to pick between, your game for $15 or Stardew Valley for $15, which one would you buy? Your student project that has very little work and stuff into it, or like a fully polished, very polished Stardew Valley?
Yeah. And
tough choice.
And that's another thing that's lacking when we talk about student games, is that there is no polish. Because you're not really polishing a student game other than making sure it doesn't blow up somebody's computer when they try and run it.
Although they should be teaching that. And this gets into, what they teach in those game schools, because I think a lot of them really lack. I mean, I know one personally. I don't know which school it was, but I know one of the students there. She used to sort of semi-work for me, and she was not a bad 3D modeler, but that's about it. She was not a great 3D modeler by any means. And she was first year at the school, kind of thing, and she passed some kind of game design course, which is basic, and the teacher quit right after she passed, and the college is like, "Hey, you made passing grades. How about you teach this class?" And she started teaching that class, and it's like, uh, and she did not make straight A's in that class either.
Yeah.
She was not even the top student in that class. In that one particular class, more or less all the classes that had been run through that class.
Yeah. And again, like, this easily segues into that talk about what you should be learning in school, what you should be learning to be a game developer. We certainly don't have the time to get to today about that. And again, we've seen these kinds of games where it looks like it could be a decent idea if it was given more time and attention. And a lot of these student projects don't get that. I mean,
yeah, I mean that's kind of how games work. I mean, like you normally, in the first month, or two, you get something pretty solid kind of thing, and like this has potential kind of thing. Because if it doesn't, you scrap it and go to something else. You know what I mean? And then you spend another 3 years on that, game to take that potential and fully realize it into a fully polished, impactful, full experience game kind of thing. Like, I mean, you can get a potential in a month. You can get potential in a student game. You can get potential in a game jam. You can't get a full game, though.
Yeah. And this has always been part of that problem when it comes to student games. Again, part of it is that you just don't know it because you haven't actually learned that yet. And then the other part is that, what did that teacher actually teach you about design? Because there is no formal lesson. I mean, we could certainly bring Jack and Edward, I think that was his name, back in for this kind of conversation about, teaching students, or even Steve, my contact from who does like a lot of Minecraft as well as just like general game design for students. That teaching somebody design is far beyond just teaching them how to code or how to do modeling. And I mean, come on, like that's been this channel for the last 4 years. Topics like UI, polish, iterating on design, making a game feel good. I mean, there could be an entire class or an entire course just on game feel and UX design.
The thing about game design is I don't think you can fully teach it, kind of thing. You can teach what you need for it, but you can't teach it. Like it's like you can't teach imagination. You can teach the methods to
draw,
bring forth your imagination, trigger it, and things that you should and should not do, kind of thing. But like you can't teach the imagination part, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you can teach the fundamentals of do and do not and be wary about this kind of thing.
You can't teach someone how to accept criticism.
Yeah, exactly. But you can teach them, methods to deal with it. Like I remember Latch, my first mentor, he made a video to where, he made this little character that was really retarded, and he made a little sound effect that's and he's like, just picture this, just take this and play this animation and this sound effect while you're reading, comments, and just, take, and then, just let them slide off your back and everything, and then go in there and pick the meaningful parts out of this, like the UI was bad, or the, the art sucked, or whatever kind of thing out of there, and use that one gold nugget, this one little gold speck in this pile of crap that you were handed, kind of thing. And knowing that and having that knowledge helps you accept criticism, but it doesn't actually teach you how to accept criticism. It just helps you along the right way.
Yep. And like going back to your point about like teaching people, like this is again one of the ever
Uh,
You hear me?
yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
This goes back to one of the things that we've said many times over, that game design is a combination of entertainment and programming. You can teach somebody the programming side of things. Somebody can go to school to learn code, to learn how to work in Unity or Unreal. You can't necessarily teach them how do you make your platformer feel right. How do you make an engaging achievement system? Like, this is when we get to a lot of the very weird soft skills that go into game
Yeah,
development.
I mean the main thing about game design is it's not new to get to video games.
Mm-hmm.
Like game design has been around for a long time. You
It's
know, game design. Like D&D was game design. All your tabletop games that were before video games were all game design. Solitaire,
mm-hmm.
Monopoly, checkers, chess. All of these were game designs. We got games, soccer, baseball. All those were game designs,
Yep.
kind of thing. Like every game we've ever had, hopscotch. Every game, going back to all eternity was all game design. It's just the question on the medium and the details of that game design and how much depth is in it.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of that you can't teach. You can teach, a lot of it is experimentation. And
Mm-hmm.
that experimentation has to be, taken up with testers. The person who invented hopscotch may have had it where, like, you had, like, squares that were, like, 3 wide, and you had to, like, jump onto 2, and then you had to jump both feet into the center one, and then, and maybe another one where it had 4 wide, and then you had to jump on 2, and then the other 2 before you go forward, kind of thing. Like, there's no telling what the inventor of hopscotch went through in their testing, but they did go through testing to find out what was fun, because if they didn't, the game wouldn't have been fun enough to stick around for all these years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, a lot of this has been the fact that, like you said, like, people have been thinking about game design since the beginning of the industry. It's just that nobody has really put it into words or a standard practice. As we've said before, a lot of developers don't like this idea of having official rules or official standards when it comes to game dev. I mean, look how hard it's been to push for universal accessibility options in games. People don't like being told that you need to do something a specific way. And while there is some truth to that, there's still, as we've said, there are basic rules of design, basic rules of game development that every game needs to follow, no matter what your scope, team, or project is. I mean, when we see a game being released with a price tag that doesn't have an options menu, or no ability to rebind controls. Yeah.
Just on or off.
I mean, again, this is like the idea that you're trying to sell me a car and you forget to include a steering wheel on your car.
Mm-hmm. Imagine if you went and bought a car and your radio was either full blast or off.
Mm-hmm.
That would be something.
Yeah.
People would never complain about that.
Oh, of course not. And
people would also not replace their radios with one that had a volume control.
And again, like, this is the issue that we see with a lot of these student games, that you're trying to sell something, even if you're selling it for $1 or 50 cents, you're still trying to sell a game. And like we said last week, price is not as big of a detriment as it was 5-10 years ago, with so many games being released and so many sales. Saying that, oh, I'm going to release a game that I did in a month for 20 cents, you're still not going to get one person to buy that game, probably.
Oh, you might, but, that's just a sucker, basically.
Mm-hmm. And again, thanks to the refund policy, they can just take that money back.
Mm-hmm. It still blows my mind how some people like on itch like release this game that was like, oh god, this is a train wreck. This is like at best a early stage prototype kind of thing. And they sold it for $10 and they sold like 10 copies of it. I was like, how did you get 10 people to buy this?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But they bought it and liked it, supposedly. It's like, maybe that's just itch, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can, you know, release a prototype and sell it for 20 cents on itch. You can't do that on Steam, though.
Yeah.
Because itch is flooded with tons of really bad games, so your game doesn't stand out like a sore thumb there. Where on, you know, Steam, there are lots of really high quality games on Steam, and they see, you know, a game that does not look amazing, you know, which, you know, well, we're talking about amazing, we're talking about where, you know, Minecraft had bad, you know, the worst graphics ever, you know.
I mean, it should look at least competent, and even getting to competent can still be a stretch.
Yeah, I mean, they you know, several of them tore my game apart, my last game, you know, which, you know, I don't think any of the art looked bad in it. None of it matched. Well, I mean, not none of it matched. I mean, there was like 2-3 different styles in there, mainly 2. And, you know, that caused it to clash, but, like, it wasn't horrible art. It wasn't good art either, but, you know, and definitely did not look good together. But the thing is that they seen that, and, you know, several of them came after me for it. You know, they came after me and said, you know, get this, you know, low quality crap show off of here. You're flooding the Steam store. And anybody who releases a Steam project on there is probably going to look worse than my game, my last game. And if it looks worse than my game, then you're probably going to get a lot worse comments. And I got a lot of pretty bad ones.
Oh, yes. And yeah, the community definitely has some impact on that worm. I mean, we've seen, again, like that's kind of been one advantage that students do have these days is that they are probably a lot more keen on social media, Twitter, TikTok, whatever it's called. There's my old manness right there.
Old man Josh.
Yeah. And so they can build up an audience like that. And again, this is where we see kind of this diverging behavior between the consumer and critical reception of a game. Like you can say, like you can have 100 friends or, you know, followers or whatever say, this looks amazing, I'm going to buy it day one. But unless they're actually putting their money where their mouth is, your game is still not going to do well.
Yep. You're back.
Yep. Did I cut out?
Yeah.
What I was saying was it doesn't matter if you have 100 followers who say guarantee they're going to buy it, unless they put their money where their mouth is, it doesn't mean anything.
And even if they are, that's 100 people.
Yeah.
Are you going to run a studio on 100 sales? If you are, then you're not running a studio.
Well, just sell the game for $100,000 a copy and you'll be good.
Yeah, there we go. If 100 people are going to buy it at $100K a copy, then yeah, you're running a studio. Selling it for $10, $15, 100 people, you are not running a studio.
Yeah. And to Worm's comment about selling a game to people who don't know you, yep, and that's how you make a living making video games. Is you're going to have to sell to people who have never heard of you, who have never been in the same room or maybe even the same continent as you. And it's a lot harder than what I just said it is.
Yeah, you just make a game in the profit, right?
Yeah. And again, this is why there is no such thing as, you know, the one size fits all for game development. I mean, look at the differences between Cliff Harris, Jake Burkett, and Jeff Vogue, for instance. They have probably combined, what are we got, like 50 years of experience making games,
Mm-hmm.
and most people probably don't know who they are. I mean, again,
Probably not.
Jeff Vogue's been doing this now since what, like 1994, so that would be, what was that, like 26 years now? And
Yeah.
how many teens are going to walk up to him and say, are you excited about the next Jeff Vogue game?"
Yeah. Nobody's going to know what the heck they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. But he is still making games. He is still living off of his titles, and
Mm-hmm.
that is a lot more than what some people can say about their games.
Yep. I know I'm certainly not living off of my titles.
Mm-hmm. And like we've seen, I've seen, like, when I was only through the itch bundle, like there's a lot of these games that are just like, they're so short, they're so limited that it just makes me wonder, was there a goal beyond just trying to make this idea? Because again, if you're trying to make an idea and see if it works, okay, that's great.
That's
But
prototyping.
yeah, but when you charge money for your prototype and you're not really thinking beyond that prototype, I don't know. It just doesn't. It just seems like you're hurting yourself more in the long run.
Oh yeah, you definitely are. Like I mean, like a lot of people think that you can just spend a week or two, make a game, and put it out on Steam or wherever, and you'll be a millionaire by the end of the week. Doesn't work like that. Not unless somehow you can make Stardew Valley in a week by yourself.
Yeah.
And that is impossible unless unless you have the powers of the Flash or time travel powers, and you have all the skills of current certain date on top of that. So like you have to have a multitude of powers that verge on omnipowerful kind of thing. Like you have to be nearly a god level to be able to pull something off like that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, people like that don't exist.
Mm-hmm. And one last point that I want to make, and then I'll throw it to you, and then we'll move on to weird games. That we see a lot of student and first-time projects, like, they'll have Facebook groups, Reddit, whatever. And again, like, when I kind of skulk around these groups, they're like, someone will post like a 5-second gif of a character, spazzing out. It looks horrible, and people are like, "Oh, that looks amazing! I'm going to buy that game. Oh, it looks good," and all that. And again, this goes back to that issue of being able to accept criticism. That, again, like we've said this before, and we're going to probably keep saying it. Releasing a game is not that big of a deal these days, I'm afraid. It's great for you and your own personal skills, but just having a game on a store, having a game out there, is not a guarantee of success or quality.
Mm-hmm. And this will be a great transition to our next topic, and maybe this will be our transition to our next topic, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But when you just release a game, it doesn't really mean anything. Not unless you actually releasing a game, kind of thing. And what I mean by that is like student projects, game jams, and whatnot. Those aren't games. Those are prototypes. Those are demos. Improper demos, mind you, not proper demos. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. They're not actually games. So like releasing one of those does not count as releasing a game, because like I've had several people come up to me and be like, "Yeah, I've made like 15 games and everything." It's like, "Have you really? Let me see. Yeah. I see 15 prototypes here that you spent maybe a week or two on, maybe a couple months on. Mm-hmm. Not any actual games. You haven't released a single game yet." Like, I mean, like if you count that, like I've released, if you count, prototypes and everything as, as games, then I have, I don't know, probably 200 or 300 games under my belt.
Mm-hmm.
But I only have actually one game underneath my belt. My last game, my word of the day, Chromasia.
Yeah.
And, that is my only actual game. And it was a full release, was a, the main story took you, roughly 15 to 20 hours to complete. And then you could 100% the game in about 50 to 70 hours, and it was a pretty fleshed out, tactical RPG, based around Disgaea, but, easy to play, unlike Disgaea, easy to get into kind of thing. It was meant to be kind of the gateway drug into tactical RPGs for new players kind of thing, as well as, being things that veteran players really enjoyed kind of thing. Yeah. But, like, your student project is not releasing a game. I don't care if you release it. It's not a released game. It's a released prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many things out there that are released prototypes, and people are considering them as released games because they ain't going to add any more to it, so it's done, which means that it's a finished game, right? Mm-hmm. Just because you're not going to add any more to it doesn't mean it's a finished game.
Yep.
It means you're finished with it, but it doesn't mean it's a finished game. It's a finished prototype that you're not going to do anything else to. Mm-hmm. And develop into a game.
Alright, so with that, let us take a look at some games that hopefully are finished, or at least somewhat along with our Weird Games segment.
We'll probably see a bunch of student projects.
They'll all be student projects this week, watch. Alright, let's see what we got here.
And that topic will lead us over to our next topic about knowing when to release your game after the Weird Game segment.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. And now Shark's back on his computer. You can see all the games now.
You can see all the train wrecks.
Cyber Emo 2007.
Dungeon of Trials. I believe that's one of the ones on the festival.
Really? Yeah, and that was one that popped up for me as well. I don't know, like, again, I like a tactical or a RPG where you build a party of characters, but something just seems off about these assets.
Yeah, I think the enemies are assets.
Yeah, they look too
different than everything else.
Yeah.
The backgrounds could be assets too.
Mm-hmm.
The characters probably aren't. But the UI is definitely programmer UI. They're
there's no aesthetic to the UI.
Nope, it's just a black transparent place with a name and a HP bar, MP bar that probably changed color.
Mm-hmm.
It is a programmer's UI, which is not the kind of UI you want. You may want programmer aspects to your UI, but you do not want a solid programmer UI.
Yeah. And here's a game that I am definitely excited about. Helix 2. I'm going to put a key for it. I doubt I'm going to get it. I may just buy the game tomorrow anyway. And again, Mason Lindroth is somewhere in New Jersey. I don't know where he's at, but I can't find him. But I would love to have him on and talk about, what goes into making a game that looks like this.
You can have your first in-person devcast.
We gotta hunt him down. There we go. In real life, we'll have to track down the developer and catch him.
There you go.
The Fall... What the hell? Old school game. Ooh, with unique jazzy music.
And then somebody he knows sees this and
calls the
leaks
cops
this to him. And you get blocked on every social media.
Mm-hmm. What? Mm. Okay, I love like the enemy art in this. Mm. Let's see. Azure Striker Gunvolt 2. Why does it sound familiar?
Gunvolt?
Yeah.
Because it should be familiar.
Yeah.
It's the Mega Man inspired game.
Oh.
That had a pretty wild success with the first one, from my understanding.
Huh. Alright, I'll put in for it. Over 20 songs performed by the virtual pop star The Muse. I have no idea what any of that means.
Yeah, I don't either. I've never played the first one. I've heard good things about it, though.
Mm. Alien Cat 3. Gunslingers of the Wasteland versus the Zombies from Mars. That's a good title.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
look at that thumbnail, too.
Yeah, that's a very high quality thumbnail. I like this one. Furries and scale. I don't know what a scaly is. I'm afraid to ask.
Well,
Not safe for work for charity.
well, scalies would be like being a shark.
Oh, good. Well, that's great. Let's see. Viking Chronicles.
So technically,
Oh, good. This is just another ripoff of yeah, this is just another ripoff of the Hercules games. That time management kind of style. SpongeBob SquarePants, Desktop Dance. I'm afraid to click on that one.
the main difference between me and a scaly is the fact is I'm actually a shark. You know, they're just pretending to be a shark.
Innsmouth Cave. So this is a definitely Lovecraftian. It's a detective adventure style interactive book. Okay, so it's basically a choose your own adventure book.
Like a Twine game.
Yeah.
They may be made in Twine. Does it say?
No, it does not. It doesn't say how many words it is, so that's a good sign. It actually has more art to it than some of the book games we've seen before.
If you could, save a link to that and send it to me privately.
Okay.
Because I want to show that to Morpheus. So he can get some ideas, since he's working on a Twine game.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that.
Klaus. Oh, Fellseal's getting DLC, so is Prison Architect. Cave Confectioner?
What?
What?
Is that where you put powdered sugar on your cave?
You are...
Looks like an RPG Maker.
Yeah. I love the feature buttery smooth frame rates. No Unity, no Unreal Engine is 100% in-house.
In-house RPG Maker?
Beaver Fun. I want to build a robot. Little Boy Stuck at Home. Sci-fi retro action game.
That looks like a Gundam.
Okay. God game. Again, some weird ones this week. Fragments Moonrise.
What's that? Escape from Cosmic Abyss.
Let's see. What? What the hell is gameplay generalization? What?
It's a generalization of gameplay.
Oh, it's a game like Dark Souls or Sekiro. It's also like Terraria, and it's also like StarCraft 2. It's also like Elder Scrolls 5. There we go.
Is it like a visual novel?
Sure.
And an RPG?
And it's an
and a
indie
walking
game.
simulator?
You get all those inspirations from these screenshots, right?
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend the other day that drove me nuts. He was, saying, I was telling him about a game, and I was like, "This is a tactical RPG." He's like, "So it's a fighter?" It's like, "No, it's a tactical RPG." Well, you're fighting people. I was like, "You fight people in almost every game. You fight people in Mario. It's a platformer."
Well, we know Call of Duty is a dating sim.
Yeah, it's also a fighter apparently too.
Mm-hmm. Wait. Whoa. Hold on. Did they really include a This is a screenshot you include for marketing your game? Change the colors. Mm.
I mean, that might be useful for colorblind.
Mm. There we go, I'm back.
I didn't know you left.
I like Furry Wolf. I'm kind of afraid to click on that one.
Yeah, I was looking at that one. I was like,
High Score Boy. What? Oh, it's a clicking simulator. You mean an idle game?
No, a clicking simulator. They're clearly different.
Mm-hmm.
See, on an idle game, you just click. On this one, you simulate click, right? You're not actually clicking, you're just simulating clicking, right? It says if you click, but you never clicked.
What is this?
As if you idled.
I dream of you and ice cream.
Oh, that sounds like a train wreck.
What?
Maybe not as bad as I thought.
This is a point-and-click adventure game? Oh, no.
It definitely doesn't sound good, but it sounds a lot better than my first impression thought it was going to be.
Go goo.
Go goo. When's somebody going to make the game Googa?
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a sequel.
Googa goo. And other baby sounds.
Okay. Penguin's Dogma instead of Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a low-brow horror action game. Oh, it will both verbally and physically abuse you. No jump scares. Ooh, auto saving's a feature.
I mean, that's a heck of a feature. I won't buy any game that doesn't have auto saving as a feature.
Mm-hmm.
No game.
No Frills Klondike Solitaire.
Sounds like a game that doesn't have any frills.
Mm-hmm. Creature Clicker.
Isn't that the kind you get in Microsoft Windows for free?
Mm-hmm.
No frills, Klondike and Solitaire and whatnot.
There's a lot of clicker games coming out for some reason.
And clicker simulators.
Oh my god, how much DLC is coming out? This whole page
And is that all for
DLC.
one game?
For two of them, it's literally all DLC.
For two different games.
And we still haven't actually seen the game. Gate Walkers, let's see.
Brain Shogo or something? Did you see that?
I'll see what I can find next. Gate Walkers is a cooperative style game with action RPG elements. Explore procedurally generated worlds. Team with other 3 players. So it's survival, but with a group. Choose on the craft. I'm not really seeing like the procedural generation. This one could have some potential.
Yeah. Looks kind of generic to me.
Yeah. It looks Unreal Engine kind of graphics.
Mm-hmm.
I'll plan for it. Maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't. Let's see. Which one were you talking about?
It was near the top. I forget the name of it. You'll know it when you see the thumbnail. There it is. Brains Sagango or something. What do you think about the thumbnail?
That's amazing. I love these graphics too. Made with RPG Maker.
That's better graphics than most RPG Maker games make.
Let's see. Gridiron. Oh, more Creature Clicker DLC. Oh my god. The hell is this? It's still DLC. Alright, this game popped up. There's a trailer for it, but there's no screenshots.
Put the trailer on mute.
Alright.
The name certainly could not be confused with any other name. Legend of Rune Sierra.
Alright. Headset warning for everyone. I don't know how loud this is going to be.
Apparently it's coming on Nintendo eShop, so.
Alright. Oh, I got it before it could start. Alright. Looks Ogre Battle-esque to me. Nations in a Tribe. Was this Avatar? Ooh, dragons versus unicorns. Still no gameplay.
I mean, they never said there was going to be well, oh yeah, this is a gameplay trailer, right?
This is the second trailer. But it has no genre. It could be any game.
It is any game.
This is a first-person shooter dating sim.
One thing for sure, it's not indie. Because it's not indie. It does not say indie in the genre.
Mm-hmm.
It's not AAA either. Because it doesn't say AAA in the genre. Not AA either, because that's not in the genre either.
I'm seeing UI. I'm seeing menus. I'm not seeing gameplay yet.
It's looking RPG-like. From the menus and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's an endless battlefield. Okay. This looks very anime to me.
And not really. You know what this is kind of reminding me of? Was like, well, that reminder just went away. Yeah, the hex-based, this looks like a hex-based tactical RPG kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think it is.
Alright. We'll do one more page, and I think we'll move on. Galaxy
Five
Crisis.
pages later.
Yeah. Hearts Medicine, Master Blaster, Ego in a Coma, Grimshade. Why does that sound familiar? Oh, I own it. No, that could be why it sounds familiar. Oh, this was that game that I was having like a horrible time running on my old computer. Freak Show. Alright, let's see.
So you had it since your old computer, but it's just now releasing?
It must be going on another platform. Oh, good.
Furry Love.
We're not clicking on that. I love this title. Detective Boiled Hard / Case File Death of the Space Dino Hunter.
Oh yeah, that sounds like an amazing game. Was that Rambo?
Could be.
In the first. Hold on, what was that UI? Did that just say flirt? Or
yeah, insult or boat.
Boat?
Mm-hmm. Alright, so there's an Adventure Game Studios game. Again, crude humor and pop culture references.
I think you should choose boat. Don't choose flirt. Choose boat.
Oh, Strip Blackjack. Yeah, let's click on that one.
Sounds good.
Click Monster. Hardcore clicker.
It's not a softcore clicker.
No. So it really is going to break your finger.
Yeah, you need one of those bots, auto-clicking bots for it.
Ginkgo?
Hard driver. I'm wondering what that one is.
Let's see. What the hell? Player flies a car and dodges obstacles.
Flies a car?
Yep, flies a car.
Is this Flappy Bird?
Kind of looks like it.
This is Flappy Bird.
Flappy car.
Yeah.
Alright.
And that car looks nothing like the one in the image. The thumbnail.
Oh, this is funny. I have a family member who just went for a walk about 30 minutes ago, and now it's pouring outside here. They are going to come back drenched. Because I don't think they took a coat at all. Oh, no. That's going to be fun. I may start laughing when they come up and they come to the door here. Okay.
Too late, you already started laughing.
Yeah. Alright, let's get to our final topic. See if we can finish before they come home and I just break out laughing. But let's continue with our discussion about, presenting a game and showing it off. Let's talk about when is a game finished. And this is always a very fun topic because there is no such thing again as a quote-unquote, the standard finish of a game. We can't just say, do X, Y, and Z, and your game is done.
There's no finish line and a goalpost that, says touchdown or whatever that you cross and you're like, I'm done with the game, and then you throw down the keyboard on the ground.
As every game developer will agree with, if you set a release date, the game will always be done by it.
Yeah, just like student projects, You just, you get, you got to have your student project done by X date. That's a release date. It's done.
And if you're not finished with it, it will automatically finish for you that very night.
Like it's a Magic Game Fairy.
Exactly.
The Magic Game Fairy will come and take the tooth out of your head, and then she'll grant your game to be finished. And since you have a lot of teeth, you can release a lot of games like that really quickly.
And as a shark, you have extra large teeth, so they're probably worth double or triple.
Oh yeah, and I can regenerate teeth constantly, so it's just so easy. But since it's so easy for me, I didn't want to cheap out and cheese it, like you do all the time when you play your games. I wanted to do it the legitimate way and not give up any of my teeth and just go with the getting good.
Yeah. And part of this issue, again, going back to the idea of a student project, is that just like we've said, just because your core gameplay loop is good, people like playing it, that doesn't mean you can just say, oh, we're done, put this on Steam, it will sell 1,000 or 100,000 copies. And for the thumbnail, of course, I included the ever famous game of a title that was released maybe a little too early, No Man's Sky.
Oh yeah.
And again,
that was released way too early.
And this is kind of that issue that we've talked about with when you put your game up as 1.0, that used to mean, I think, a lot more than it does today. Again, with physical releases back in the day. Back in the 90s, when you put your game out there, it better not have any major bugs, so you can't release a patch on day one to fix it.
Because there was no patches or internets or anything back then.
That, again, shocking all the kids watching this.
Yeah, you couldn't plug up your dial-up connection into your NES because dial-up connection didn't exist when the NES was out.
Oh, I know that.
I think dial-up connection came out around, what was that, around PlayStation 1 era?
somewhere around then, the Dreamcast was the first console to actually have a built-in dial-up modem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that amazing piece of technology.
Yeah. When that came out, I was like, oh, why would you ever play your games online?
Mm-hmm. And
here we are several years later.
And in the last segment, or our first topic, we talked about polish being one of the major points. Like, we're not even talking about content yet. Just like making sure your game doesn't have any major bugs to it, that, you know, the aesthetics hold, that the UI works. You know, like, this is basic stuff that needs to be done. And one of the things that drives me crazy, like I said earlier, is that people will release a game and, you know, there's no control rebinding. There's no option menus. There's no volume sliders.
There's no tutorial.
Yeah.
No onboarding.
I love it when a game loads up and there is literally no control scheme mentioned whatsoever.
You gotta love the ones you load up and there's not even a title screen.
Oh, yes. Or that one game that I played that was a platformer that said you should play it on the gamepad, and then when I play on the gamepad, select was set to jump.
Because we all know that when you want to jump, you need to press select.
Mm-hmm.
The most convenient button to put as your jump.
It was my very first platformer too.
Was pause in your X button?
Mm-hmm. Something like that. And like we've said, in today's market, you need your game to be at its best possible version at 1.0. It shouldn't.
And when we say best possible version, we mean that it needs to be visually pleasing too and well polished. You know, you need to have good graphics, a good aesthetic graphics, and by that we don't mean like a lot of graphical horsepower. We mean, we've talked about this many times before, that it visually looks good. You know, like consumers don't care if it took you 10 minutes to do those graphics or 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
As long as they look good and they all fit together.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget about the UX design as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said earlier, with onboarding. Like, we play a game where there's no tutorial, there's nothing that actually tells you how to play this game. And, you know, some people will argue, oh, the game's trying to be mysterious. No, you don't be... A tutorial should not be mysterious.
Yeah. Like, that is unexcusable. Like the closest game that I could ever give, you know, an excuse to that was a game where you played as a monkey ape thing, and you had to figure things out, because I mean that was kind of part of the core gameplay loop, was figuring things out, but that still didn't excuse it from not having a tutorial.
You mean that Ancestors game we played?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the closest one I could give it to not having a tutorial.
Yeah. And again, you need to have onboarding. And this, I think, is one of those areas where a lot of developers tend to fail on, is the idea of what onboarding means for a game. And again, like, that is another topic. That's another 4 topics we could talk about beyond, you know, just finishing a game. And another thing, if your game is finished, there should be nothing on there that says coming soon or feature not done yet.
Exactly.
And
unless it's a DLC coming soon, you know, but like, you probably don't want to put that on there. Just have that appear at some point after release.
Yeah.
After you know the game has succeeded and that it's worth making a DLC for it.
Yeah, like, this is the thing that drove me, like, really up the wall with Atomic Crops. The game is done, yet you still can't bind controls, and the leaderboards doesn't work. It says coming soon. And and this is the thing you have to understand, like, this is one of our major lessons for anyone watching who wants to make a game. The consumer does not care that you're tired or that you're out of money or you just want this game out. They care about what is the version they're getting on the store that they're giving money to. And if that
And
version,
is it worth the money?
Yep. If that version is inferior or is missing features that you promise or has things that just aren't done in it, they're not going to stick around wait for you to finish.
Yeah, roadmaps don't work, except for the gullible. And gullible people don't buy indie games generally. They buy AAA games.
Yep.
And you're not a AAA game, so you better not rely on them being gullible. As a matter of fact, they're almost anti-gullible kind of thing. They're so ungullible that they're like, they will suspect that you're trying to take them as gullible before you even do anything bad. That's where we got back to the aesthetics. The aesthetics of my game was not horrible, but not great. And people just, came out and, accused it of being an asset flip and all this other stuff because they are so anti-gullible kind of thing. They anything that even hints at possibly, could be in 100 years something bad, they are going to smack you down like the instant they smell it.
Oh, yes.
There's an analogy of smelling blood in the water for sharks, but that's actually untrue. But that analogy does technically work for Steam and whatnot. Yeah. If they sense anything wrong, they are going to rip into you.
Mm-hmm. And Shark is preparing his pay-to-win shield as we speak for Project Triad.
Oh yeah. Like anybody who pays $20 gets immunity for so many days. Because that always works well.
Oh yes. And again, as you said, I think the indie comparisons are really good. It's kind of that very weird, in a way, it's a very weird contradiction or thing about the consumer market.
How they're harder on indie games than they are on AAA.
Yeah, and that many indie developers are first timers or people who are trying to learn the game, and they're presenting their game to people who have hundreds if not thousands of games under their belt. I mean, look at me these days. I mean, where are we at right now? I'm up to maybe 6,000-7,000 games I've played throughout my life. So when I play a video game, the stuff that I spot within seconds could take a novice, hours of play to figure out. I mean, I still get stuff somebody will say, I don't know how to explain this issue with a game, and I explain it perfectly within 10 words on Twitter. And that just comes with time and experience.
Yeah, and it comes with Twittering because you have to get those word count down.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta get good at low word counts. But the point is, when you're trying to release a game today, people are smart about these kinds of games, especially consumers of indie games. I think, again, as you just said, somebody who plays indie games is not a novice. They are not the general consumer. They don't just, play Call of Duty or Fortnite all day and call it a day. They have played hundreds of games. Your platformer, your visual novel game, your whatever, they have seen many examples of that. And this goes back to what we said in the last part about people getting stuck in that echo chamber that they'll just show to their friends or other students, and they'll go, oh, this is an amazing game, I love these graphics, oh, your character walks weird, that should be a feature in your game. And then you put it out on Steam and people are like, this game controls horribly, 0 out of 5, trash game, rip-off game developer.
And the thing is it's hard not to get into that echo chamber. I sort of did to a certain point on my last one because my testers seeing nothing wrong with my graphics. They love my graphics. Like I was talking about changing them a little bit and making them better. They're like, no, don't change them. And I still did change them and made them better. Mm-hmm. And then they didn't complain. I was like, I'm only changing them a little bit, not a lot, kind of thing. But they were really into the graphics, and then they released, and to my surprise, hey, it doesn't have good graphics after all, despite how much they love the graphics.
Yeah.
And I had several people, probably about 10 people, and they were strangers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And again, like as we've said, like that Sky Shine's bedroom is another big example of this. Like I did that interview with him. He said I show this game to friends, play testers, and people at conventions, and they all love the game. I got nothing but positive feedback. We play the game, the consumers play the game day one, and had nothing but issues with that design.
Yeah, I didn't get nothing but positive feedback. I certainly got a lot of negative feedback and everything, but I didn't get any. Well, I did get a lot on the art at first, but because it was a lot worse. But didn't really get very much feedback in the end on art, other than people wanting shadows and the aspect of adding shadows to the game was just like, we're going to have to redo every piece of art in here and then some to get shadows in here and every animation and everything. Oh, that is a world of work. You're going to have to miss out on shadows, kind of thing. Little did we know that we actually did need to redo all the art anyway. I just needed to learn how to redo it. And since that, in the remake and everything that we're going to make, going to have shadows in.
And now, like, kind of like switching gears for a second, like when we talk about content-wise with your game, this is another thing that a lot of developers have trouble with, because as we've said before, there is no standard amount of content for a game. You can't just say a platform must have between 10 and 20 levels to get a C or get a 70 on Metacritic.
Yeah. I know, again, back to the word of the day, Chromasia, I know with Chromasia, I was kind of stuck on that kind of part about, like I was like, well, your normal tactical RPGs have like 40 hours of gameplay. There's no way I can get 40 hours of gameplay out of this. How much gameplay can I get? And I kept on fighting with it and everything. And for a long time, I thought I was only going to be able to get an hour and a half out of it. And I was like, that is not enough. How can I get more? And, I racked my brain on it for a while. And when I thought I had finally gotten, up to maybe about, 10 hours or so, went ahead with it. And it ended up being 15 to 20.
Yeah. I mean,
now I think that's too far.
That Dolphin game that we played the other night, he said that originally there was going to be like 15, 20 different missions in that game. And they realized they couldn't just do that with the budget that they had, so they lowered it down to like 6 or 7. And, you have to, again, it is better to have all your content in the game be of high quality than to have more content that is of lesser quality.
Yeah, I mean, like with Project Triad, when I was looking, at how many cards we were going to make, I was like, we need probably 250, 300, because that's what, normal card games have in their first set kind of thing. Good firm base that people can play on. And it's like, yeah, I can't afford that, I gotta hire an artist to make 300 different cards, 250 to 300 different cards, and ain't nobody talking about that for any kind of cheap price. So I cut it, and I cut it, and I cut it, and I cut it until I got down to what I thought was the bare minimum of, hey, this is going to be fun, we're going to have enough variety, but people are going to buy all these cards really quickly, and we're going to have to get another set out really quickly if the game succeeds, kind of thing. And that was 150 cards. Yeah. And, it's like, if this game succeeds, we're really going to have to get another set of cards out in 3 months. after release, which is going to be really hard. I'm not looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's what I could afford, and what my limitations would allow.
Yep.
And it met that bare minimum of this could work, this could succeed with this few cards.
Yeah. And
it's just for how long.
And again, you have to compromise as a game developer. This the Orami Ishmael podcast I just put up yesterday. He said that when it comes to being a game developer, the finished game, more often than not, is not the original vision by a developer. Because you had to compromise. You have to, again, think in terms of reality and not just what's in your head. And there's a lot that goes into unpacking that single statement there. Again, in your head, everything works perfectly, and you can, churn out 500 levels that are all perfect. Now try putting that to code. Now actually designing those levels.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly it's a different scope.
Yep. Which is the reason why a game design document is so important, because you just take all those ideas basically and you write them on paper, and then you add detail to flesh them out, and how they how this system ties into this system and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And then once you get all that kind of worked out, you kind of go through and evaluate how much scope is this, and as a beginning developer, you're probably not going to be able to tell, because you've never done anything of these things before. Or maybe you've done a few because you've made some concepts and stuff before, and you kind of know what work goes into this one thing and this one thing kind of thing, but you don't know how much work goes into these 20 things over here.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And a lot of the stuff, the reason why you don't know it, because you didn't even know that existed when you first started designing your game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I hear from a lot of developers, that over the course of building their first real title, they're going to learn things about game design that they didn't even know existed. And this goes back to what you were saying in the last part, that like teaching design. It is very hard to teach a one-size-fits-all course on game design, because every genre is different. Again,
every game is different.
Yep.
As long as it's not a clone.
Yep. You building an ARPG, even if you make the best damn ARPG, it beats Diablo, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn all combined, that still means you are a crap racing game designer or a horrible action game maker, because you haven't built those games yet.
Mm-hmm.
And like this goes back to the BioWare example, that it, like, for somebody like me, I didn't need to see too much to know that Anthem wasn't going to do well, because BioWare is not a gameplay focused company. They make good stories, they make good engagement like that, but I hated the gameplay in Mass Effect. I have not enjoyed one of their games from a gameplay point of view. So if you tell me that they're going to design a game that is entirely gameplay focused with very little on story, I'm like, yeah, this is not going to do well. Unless they somehow hire unless they hire Team Ninja, I don't think it's going to do well.
Yeah. Does that mean I'm a crap card game designer?
What was that?
Does that mean I'm a crap card game designer?
Uh-oh. Well, you at least done some prototyping, but we'll have to see when the game comes out. But can you make a visual novel game? That's the question.
Never made one before.
Alright. Well, you can finish that tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
On your new PC, you should be able to do things 4 times faster now.
Yep, even though my processors are only 25% faster.
Mm-hmm.
And my graphics card is 0% faster because it's the same graphics card.
But, again, this is that challenge when it comes to game design, that if you're, this is why prototyping and scaling or scoping out your project is so important. You don't want to wait 4 or 5 years into a game's development and then figure out, hey, guess what? We have no idea how this action game is supposed to work. How do we finish this game?
That's what happened with Anthem.
Yep. And again, just because you know one genre, or as we've said before, we've had a lot of teachers and long-term developers on who've said this, like people who think just because I play a lot of game X or I'm a huge fan, that doesn't translate into saying, oh, I can design a game that's better than that.
Yeah, that means actually the opposite kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. You have to be able to analyze a game. And again, these are very specific skills that we're talking about. And the majority of people don't have it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I played I don't know how many RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much that affected me actually making my first RPG?
Not a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It was maybe 1%.
Yeah. And I mean, I could see for myself with how I play a lot of the retro games these days that I'm looking at these games a lot differently than I did 20, 25 years ago because I didn't know about game design when I was 8 or 9 years old. But now I understand things about, how patterns work, how enemy spawn placements happen. And
how individual systems and mechanics work and tie into each other.
yeah, I can see, the man behind the curtain these days. I know when
You
a
can
game
see how
does.
she's it.
Yeah, exactly. I know when a game does something. It's not because the game is angry at me or the game is trying to cheat. That's just the design of that game in question.
It's just a cheating design.
Yeah. And like bringing this back to our topic, that when you're trying to finish a game, you have to understand, one, what is your goal of this design? What are you trying to achieve? And then second, what does the audience expect out of this game? Like if you build, for instance, imagine if you spend 5 years of your life building a farming sim game, your Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon, and the entire game ends as soon as a crop is done. You don't harvest it, you don't go into town, you don't sell it. It's just you grow a tomato, you win, game over. People are going to be pissed.
Are you sure? I thought they liked that kind of thing.
I'm talking about there's nothing else beyond it. Like if you try to build a Stardew Valley game and not have any sim aspects, any villager interactions, not even any building of your farm up.
Yeah, but you missed the joke there. I thought they liked that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is another point about when we talk about that echo chamber effect, that you need to talk to people who play the genre, because they are surprisingly going to know what kind of games they like. I know it's shocking.
Yeah, and I would recommend, having testers also not only that like that genre, but ones that dislike that genre, because I think that's really what helped me a lot with, again, the word of the day, Chromasia, because like bringing people in that, that did not like tactical RPGs, and people who are mad with them, and people who just utterly hated turn-based, and turning it into something that both the fans, the mass, and the dislikes liked was, I think, a real accomplishment there. And you need testers from each one of those to do that. Now then, alike isn't mean they think it's the most amazing game ever kind of thing. It's not like I turned this, somebody who hated turn-based into, oh, now they love turn-based kind of thing. They just enjoyed the game because their pain points, their reasons for not liking the game, like the turns take too long, or this takes too long, or, it's too hard to learn, or, this, that, or the other, I solved those issues for them. And, that's not going to work for everybody.
Yeah. If you remember George Fan of PopCap and Plants vs. Zombies fame, his GDC talked about making the game so his mother could understand, who's never played a game before. And this is, I think, one of those again, this is a topic about UI and UX design that's probably beyond our piece for today, but some people will think, or they'll hear that and go, how does that help making a game that your mother can play? But by doing that, he began to understand UI and UX design more than if he just put it down in front of, the top 10 tower defense players. And
Yeah.
you can solve problems that people may have completely written off, and they may not even realize it's a problem. But he
Yeah.
managed to do it.
And keep in mind, let's clear some possible confusion. People might be confusing, what I said of making a game for everybody. No, I'm not, making, a game that people that dislike turn-based games that actually like it is not making a game for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's making a game for the people who like it and opening the door to people who don't like it, that genre normally. Because the fact is, some of those people just don't like the gameplay loop, and you're never going to reach those people.
Yeah.
But people who would like the gameplay loop, but can never get to the gameplay loop because they're chased away because it's too hard to learn, or there's too many buttons, it's too confusing, it's lame for some reason, whatever that is. You can solve a lot of those issues and reach a broader but not a broad audience. You get a little bit more outside of your normal genre without even getting actually outside of the genre, just getting rid of pain points inside of your genre that opens it up to people who are vulnerable to those pain points. And, pain points is, something you need to be worried about, whether it is, fans of your game or not fans of your game, because that's what's going to determine whether they're fans or not. Because if they encounter so many pain points that they quit playing it, guess what? They're not a fan of your game anymore. It doesn't matter how much they like tactical RPGs or whatever genre you're making. If they hit their limit on pain points, they're going to quit playing. And when they quit playing, they're no longer really a fan of your game, kind of thing.
Yeah. And this is this is why I said in an article I wrote that there's a difference between somebody who doesn't like a genre and someone who doesn't like your take on the genre.
Or every take that's ever existed in the genre.
Yeah.
Because, tactical RPGs as a whole have been widely, flagged for being very hard to learn, very hard to get into.
Grand strategy games, fighting games. Again, it is. Look at Smash Brothers. Smash Brothers was not built as a competitive fighter. It was built to be more of a casual fighting game, and it blew up more than I think Nintendo ever anticipated it did. And one of the reasons why was that the barrier of entry was so low.
Yep.
And like we said, go ahead.
You get rid of those pain points. You lower the barrier of entry and everything, and you make you change nothing about the genre of the game, but you just made a game way, way better. And that is, going that extra step is something that really makes a quality game, I think. It's not the end-all, be-all to be in a quality game, but, it goes a long ways, I think. Because, if you can meet a player that far, you can bring people in, then you can bring people into your core gameplay loop. And if you nailed your core gameplay loop, then you may have them, hooked for a long time. Uh-oh. Got my volume up.
Uh-oh. I lowered. You're as low as I can make you on this end. Unless I kind of cut your gain. It could also be my microphone thing up.
Can you lower me on OBS without lowering it in your headset?
Yeah. Alright. I lowered Shark by 5%. Let me know if that's any better.
Probably going to need to be lower than that.
It's hard to tell sometimes with this.
Yeah.
But yeah. And again, this is this kind of polish and iteration. This is important stuff when it comes to making a product. Again, we're not talking about making a prototype or beta or an alpha or anything like that. We're talking about making something that you're going to put a price tag on and put it next to games like, again, Stardew Valley, FTL, the 50 other games being released that very day.
Yeah, and not just those that were released that very day, but you're competing against, you're not competing, but you're being compared against games that have been released all over Steam. 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. Not just the ones that were released on the same day you released.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you make an FTL based game, FTL still exists out there. It's not going away, kind of thing. And if your game is just an inferior FTL, there's not much reason for a person who plays FTL to play your game, unless they just really, really want more and they're willing to accept an inferior version of it.
Yep. And most people aren't going to do that.
Yep. Most people will just throw another few hundred hours into FTL.
Yeah. Or they'll just refund your game immediately. I mean, we've played games. I mean, we can also look at some of the demos we've looked at over the last week that within 10 seconds of loading up, we say, this is an amazing game, we're going to pick this up. Or we say, this is horrible, I don't want to play this anymore.
Your mic's cutting out.
Uh-oh. Test.
It's good now.
Okay. But yeah, like I said, there are demos that we know within seconds whether or not that game is going to be good or bad.
Generally, yeah. It, you can often find out if a game, is good or bad before you even actually start the game, just from the title screen.
Mm-hmm. If there is a title screen.
Yeah. If there isn't a title screen, you just found out that it's probably not going to be good. If there's no volume control or any kind of options, it's probably not going to be good. Mm-hmm. It's not a 100% rule, but it is a pretty general kind of thing. Like, if you miss this obvious stuff,
what else did
not
you
obvious
miss?
stuff did you miss?
Exactly. Yeah. And again, this is that distinction that has to be made when you're trying to go from a hobbyist to a developer, from a prototype to a finished game. That when you put your game on itch, if you say this is a student project, I just spent a few hours with, here is for free, okay, people are be very accepting of that, they're not going to say anything. If you tell me this is a finished game on Steam, I'm charging $19.99 for it, you damn better well believe that people are going to pick that thing apart.
Mm-hmm. They are going to pick it apart, and then they're going to pick you apart.
Mm-hmm. And again, like we've said, we've seen amazing games come from smaller developers. Again, Vision Soft Reset being one of my favorite examples. But even with that, we can agree, sadly, that the presentation, the onboarding, wasn't quite there for that game.
Yeah, and some of the puzzles weren't quite onboarding enough.
Oh, yes. We can certainly say that. And again, some of that stuff comes from...
That was probably one of your most favorite games of all times.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that year, it made my top 10 list.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that said, it didn't take me long to figure out why that game didn't sell well, or why a lot of people didn't play it after looking at the screenshots and the store page.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't convey how awesome it is through the aesthetics.
And don't forget, he told us in the final quarter of the game was kind of rushed because he was getting a job and he had to finish the game up. So there's obviously issues left in at the end.
Yep, because of his contract that he was going to sign, and they have he was signing with some AAA developer, I can only assume, and they said, well, you can't make a game while you're working for us.
Yeah. And
so if you want to make that game, you got to finish it and release it before you work for us. And he had his work start date, and he had to push it out before that point, and he can't issue any kind of updates or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that game will stay eternally the way it is until he loses that job.
yep. And like we said, there is no standard path of game development. Some games get the luxury of years and years of development. Other ones, you gotta release that game because guess what? You have no money coming in, and you need to pay rent this week.
Yep, but if you release a even 95% baked game out there, you're probably going to fail. You're probably not going to get that money that you needed to pay your rent.
People expect 100%. They probably expect like 110% quality these days.
Out of indies anyway.
Oh yes.
AAA, they're fine with 10%, 5%, 1%, but
it looks really good.
Yeah. But indies, you need 120, 150, 200% to have any chance at making any kind of money.
Yep.
And when we say a chance at making money, we're talking about a chance at breaking even, not a chance at making $1 million or anything. This is a chance at breaking even, a chance of if you're not 150% kind of thing, then you have basically no chance of breaking even. You basically have no chance of making a few $100. I don't know what percentage you would say Chromasia's at, but we keep on going back to that today. But I know it was not at 150% kind of thing. And, it was certainly, I think, a fairly high percentage. But, I think after, I think gross we made about $1,400, which after Steam's percentage and taxes, that came down to $700. And yeah, it only took 3 years to make that, you take, let's just take my salary, over 3 years, what is that, about 50 cents a day, and that doesn't pay anything to my programmer. Oh, I got to split it with my programmer, so 25 cents a day, and then I paid 100 something for this and 100 something for that, and I paid for the Steam fees. Oh, and I paid like $5,000 for my LLC. Oh, guess what? We're way into the negative. We're thousands upon thousands into the negative. You have to release 150% game, and that means having really good visual aesthetics. It ain't got to be high horsepower. It ain't got to be high work, but it's got to be high looks.
Yep. And we're starting to run into time, but I think one last thing that I want to touch on that I'll throw over to you is that, as we said earlier, when it comes to the bullets on your marketing page, or the major things you're trying to hit with your game, that like we said, it's better to not promise and over deliver compared to over promise and under deliver. And you have to be very much aware of, again, what you're feasibly able to do. This was the issue that No Man's Sky ran into, that when that game blew up, they were promising, again, the moon and the stars, no pun intended, and it was barely there.
Yeah, they had a bunch of procedural generation that felt very stale after one planet. One single planet, and it just felt absolutely stale. I know that I've seen No Man's Sky, and I really wanted it, and I researched into it, and because I'm the kind of person that likes buying games on day one if I'm really excited about them. But I'm not going to just buy a game on day one, with no questions asked. I am going to research it and make sure that I think that it's a good buy potentially before I buy it, and get the chance of refunding it. But I looked into No Man's Sky so deeply, and the only thing I could see is the same exact game, quote unquote, gameplay demo being shown over and over again. I was like, where is this is all they have to show in the several years they've been showing this off. This is trouble. This is very big trouble. Like I'm not going to pre-order this. Like I was so going to buy it, and I did the research like a week before they released it, and I was like, this looks like somebody's throwing a rug over somebody's eyes, because there is so many red flags here. And then they released, and guess what? I was like, whoo.
Yeah, and this is why that bullet. This is like when we said last week about good demos and good prologues. That if the demo of a game is amazing, I mean outright fantastic, there's a good chance that's going to be an amazing game. Mm-hmm. But to make a demo of that high quality is out of the scope for a lot of game developers.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like to Worm's point, the difference between selling a dream or selling a product. That if you're on Kickstarter, if you're on itch, or you're trying to make something and you're not intending, and you're not charging a price tag for it, you can certainly sell that dream. But again, when you put your game on Steam or Humble or GOG or
you're selling a product.
Exactly. And again, it goes back to that argument about the artist versus the businessman, and how many people still have that misconception that it's a either or it's a black or white. You can only be one or the other. But you have to be able to understand both if you expect your game to succeed these days.
Yeah, GOG wouldn't let me on their platform, and I was very mad at that for a long while. I was like, is it because it's not selling well on Steam? I thought it was just because it wasn't selling well on Steam. And then, after much research and whatnot, and I found out why it isn't selling well on Steam. It's like, oh, that's why they don't want it on there. They don't want it on there because it's not selling on Steam. They don't want it on there for the reason why it's not selling on Steam.
Yeah. And again, this is that point we've said before. Steam doesn't care about your game. Valve does not care about, consumers don't care about it. They don't care that you put months or years of your life into it. They don't care that if your game has negative on Steam that you cry about it, or that you are throwing temper tantrums on Twitter or on Facebook. They care about the product that's on that page, and that's it. That's where the buck stops.
Yep. In the end, nobody cares about the developers, and that's kind of part of the problem with the industry.
Yep.
Is nobody cares about the developers, and a lot of people try to screw over developers.
Yep.
We, while we are making the games, we are literally at the bottom of the totem pole. The consumers are above us. The platforms are above us. The publishers are above us. We are bottom feeders as developers. We are the bottom feeders. And the thing is we're the one that's making the thing that everybody going after, kind of thing. But somehow we became the bottom feeders, and that's something I don't understand. How did we, the core of what this thing is even about, become the bottom?
Oh yeah. And again, that is another topic right there to get to in the future. And I think with that, we are just about at time for me. So I think we'll wrap things up. I guess, do you have any final points you want to say on the topic?
When we talk about general releasing a game kind of thing, like we've talked about this in the past, is your game is either underdone or overdone oftentimes. And a general rule of thumb, and this does not in any way apply across the board kind of thing, but as a general rule of thumb, any game that took less than a year to make is not finished. And any game that is taken more than 3 years to finish, unless it's been a hobby project, part-time project, whatever, it's overcooked, overdone, and maybe mismanagement kind of thing. You're probably going to fail because of other issues, kind of thing. So you ideally want to fall in that 1 to 3 year period. But that said, I mean, there are many examples of games that came out after the 3 year period and before the 1 year period that succeeded wildly. But those are exceptions to the rule, not the rule, kind of thing. And the rule can be bent and but not broken, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, use that as a general guide to, is this game finished? Because, I know that I tried to finish our last game. I think it was around the 1.5 year mark. And I thought it was done, and then we were just doing extra stuff because we were waiting on waiting on the music kind of thing, and we were just adding more stuff in that point. And it wasn't until around the 1 3/4 years part where the game finally started developing its own personality kind of thing, and then it's like, oh, this game isn't done. We got to do a lot of things here. And we started doing them, and it ended up being 2.5, a little bit over 2.5 years before we were actually done, and we weren't done with the game yet because we didn't have our aesthetics in check.
Mm-hmm.
But if we had gotten the aesthetics in check, it would have probably hit right about the 3 year mark.
Yep. And like you said, there is no hard rule about this. We're not saying if you go 4 years instead of 3, your game's going to be an instant failure. Or, 3 years instead of 4, it's going to be an instant success. But as we've said before, there's limits on how long. There are soft limits, I think, in terms of how long you can really work on a game before it can't really be a success. Again, we've seen games from developers who spent 8-9 years working part-time on it. And the problem, of course, is that when we look at some of these games, there's also something someone could have done maybe in 2 or 3 years. Even if there is a unique aesthetic, even if the art is different, that it's very hard to kind of put into time or put into years or hours, whatever, the amount of work that goes into a game.
Right, and consumers don't care about that either.
Oh, yes.
They have zero cares. And the fact is when I say the 1 to 3 year point is the sweet spot is because of statistics. It's not a hard rule or anything. It's because of statistics. When we look at statistics of games that fail or succeed, kind of thing, probably about 99% of them are in the, maybe not even that much. Maybe it's 95. I don't know, but it's somewhere in the high 90s, kind of thing, that are in that percentage in the 1 to 3 years that succeeded versus failing, kind of thing. Don't get me wrong, there are billions of games probably that failed in that time period too. But when we're talking about success to failure rate, it is a lot higher in the 1 to the 3 year mark than it is. It's thousands and thousands of times higher than the less than 1 year, and it's also probably hundreds, if not thousands, of times higher than the 4 year plus. Keep in mind that the success rate in the 1 to 3 year is still less than 1%. So when less than 1% in the 1 to 3 years is thousands upon thousands higher than your less than 1 year, and hundreds to thousands higher than your after 3 years kind of thing, you kind of gauge the kind of issue here, that most games fail, and if you don't have everything right, and then if you didn't spend enough time on them, then everything ain't gonna be right. If you spent too much time on them, you over-examine things, you mismanage things, you more than likely, in general, did all these things that messed up with the design of the game and the feel of the game that made it overcooked. It's like you cook a cake. If you pull a cake out, put it in there, and say it's supposed to be done in 20 minutes. You put it in there and you pull it out in 5 minutes, and you cut up and offer a slice to somebody, this goo. Nobody's going to want to eat that. You also, wait till about 40 minutes to pull that thing out. It's going to be this burnt mess, and you cut a slice of that and give it to anybody. They're not going to want to eat that too. There is this time frame, and it's more exact with cooking because, other than elevation kind of affecting things, it's pretty hard rule. It's not a hard rule inside of game development, but it's a hard statistic is what it is. It's a hard statistic, that statistically your odds go way down before 1 year and after 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the issue, like if you're working on a hobby project kind of thing, and then that hobby project turns into a professional project, your time restarts. Well, it doesn't technically restart, but it sort of restarts when it jumps from hobby to professional.
Or if it goes from you working part-time on a project to then dedicating yourself full-time to it.
Yeah. It doesn't exactly reset, but it sort of does.
Yeah. How you approach it definitely changes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think here's the final point that I do have to get going. There are no absolutes when it comes to game development. As we've said, these are all very much soft rules. There are exceptions to these rules, just as there's those that prove the rule. And as a game developer, so much of what can make you succeed or fail can be elements that you didn't know existed. And this is why we keep harping on doing play testing. Having people look at your game, look at other people's examples, do as much research on a game as you can. This is why we see the difference between somebody whose first game is a Metroidvania, but they worked on other projects or they did a lot of feedback and play testing, versus somebody whose first game could be a platformer. They did absolutely no work on whatsoever, no play testing, no iteration, and it's a horrible game.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you love platformers, even if you've beaten every 2D platformer ever made, that doesn't magically translate into skills when it comes to making a project.
Yeah, it's like you've driven cars all your life. You can make one from scratch, right?
Mm-hmm. Or you play a football in your backyard, now go play in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. And I will kind of contradict you a little bit there, Josh. There are some hard rules in game development, like include a volume slider on your UI in your options.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely include options, include a tutorial. Include but don't make a handheld tutorial. There are many hard rules like that many people miss out on. Many new developers miss out on. And that is a sign for failure right there. That is pretty much a death flag right there if you leave those things out.
Yeah.
There are hard rules, but there's a lot of things that there is no hard rules. There's a lot of things that there is no rules for. We're in pretty lawless country kind of thing. But there are some rules that are very, very hard, and it's like every game should have these things.
Yeah.
And when a game comes out that does not have these things, that is almost a death flag of that game right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it to a point does not matter anything you do after that point if there's not a volume slider for your sound.
Mm-hmm.
Because unless everybody has the perfect, exact perfect volume control, then you're not going to please them.
Yeah.
And if they're not pleased on that, that's one pain point for them. And then the next thing you missed like that is going to be the next pain point. And the next one is going to be the next pain point. And, before you know it,
it's just going to
they're in the
spiral.
They're 5 minutes into it, and they've had 200 pain points. And they're like, you know what? This game is the most horrible piece of crap I have ever played. And I'm going to go refund this, and I'm going to go chew out the developer and tell them that this is the most horrible piece of crap. You should have never put this on Steam. And they were right on that one.
Mm-hmm.
It may not have been the most horrible piece of crap, but they were definitely right on you should have not put that on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
And that they'll tell you that you needed a volume slider, and that's definitely something you needed in there.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also going to, listen, like 5 pages worth of insults to you, and that's something you don't need to listen to. But those two things about you shouldn't have put it on Steam and you should have had a volume control are definitely things you should have had. So even those bad posts have good things for you. But you need to try to get those good things from testers before you release on Steam.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't go to testers, that's already pretty much a death flag for your game. Like, if you did not get a lot of testing in, your game is 99.999999999 infinity over 9 chance of failure.
Yep. And I think with that very touching, yeah, exactly, Mojo. I think with that very positive and bright outlook, I think that's our perfect point to end the stream on for tonight, or our show. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will be back next Sunday around 4:30 EDT for our next live show. We will be doing our next Game Developer Roundtable chat on Tuesday night. I believe we set that for 7:30 or 8 p.m. I'll check the Discord after this. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I am at GWBicer. You'll find our Discord and Patreon link down below, as well as Two Sharks Discord and Twitter as well.
And my YouTube channel too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's down there.
All right. So, with that said, everybody, have a great rest of your Sunday. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers watching this. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Have a great night, folks. What was it?
We're all fathers here. Fathers of games.
There we go. And getting good.
Yep.
Alright, everyone. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I'll see you guys tonight for the last day of the Steam Festival.
See ya.